is a tough climb. And I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. 'Cause anything we're doing is a tough climb.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Untapped Podcast. My name is Jacob Gabel.
And my name is Jacob Wurtz, guys. Welcome to episode 140 of the Untapped Podcast. If this is your first time joining us, first of all, thank you. We're thrilled to have you here with us, I should say. We actually have 5 main formats of our show. First, we have 14 Fortitude episodes. Now, in these episodes, we cover the mental side of our brand. So we go over our anecdotal experiences with things like mindset and mentality. We then pass on tips and advice to you guys to then apply to your own lives. Next, we have physical vitality episodes. Now, in these episodes, we cover the physical side of our brand. So we really get to showcase our expertise here because you have 2 certified personal trainers. So in these episodes, we cover everything to do with the gym, nutrition, workouts, mental toughness programs like 75 Hard, supplements, untapped training, which is going very, very well. If you guys have any questions regarding untapped training, please do not hesitate to reach out. Sometimes we will even take trending articles or topics within the fitness industry and give our thoughts and opinions on those. Guys, those physical vitality episodes are full of free game, so make sure you pay attention to those.
Let's go, dude. Dial in. Let's make some people better today. Guys, our third format is our breaking news format. That is a current event-based format. The U.S. election just occurred. There's a lot of what we talked about there. But we go over current events, current articles going on in the world. Could be the world. The United States is what we stick with a lot of times just because it affects us here where we're at. Now, we are not dooming and glooming and causing issues or going over all the bad issues going on in the world because that's not our entire brand. As Wurtz said, our main brand is health and fitness and actually making people better in this country and pushing people forward. These breaking news episodes actually do a lot of that as well. Just awareness and a lot of pushing people forward. Now, our fourth format is our Knights Table format. That is our masculinity-based format. We talk about toxic masculinity, if it's real, what it is, fatherhood, the impact it's had on our lives, and really just male topics in general, how important men are to society and the things they can do for society as well. Now, keep in mind, I'm 26, Wurtz is 26. My brother, Mitchell, our producer, is also 24. So, because of that reason, we are not coming to you from the top of the mountain or some kind of all put together men here. We are not the only perfect man to ever walk the earth is Jesus Christ. Now, on to our fifth format. That is our guest format. We sit down with an entrepreneur, fitness professional, athlete, doctor, anybody that brings you value in some way or somebody with a great story that you're going to glean a lot of information on and learn a lot from. We learn a lot from those episodes. You're going to gain a ton from those episodes as well. Now, our final thing to introduce is our producer and my brother, Mitchell Gabel.
Hello, what's going on?
What's up, King Ranch?
I'm a rancher now.
Nice.
Yeah, as soon as we watch Yellowstone.
You go to Texas recently, or
no?
Is that why you just had to fit in down there, eh?
I don't fit in.
No cowboy hat, nothing, no Stetson.
No, I don't have a belt buckle.
We got to get a cowboy hat on you too.
We all. I guess you have a good one though.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I love that thing.
Yeah, it is sweet.
I might just start wearing it all the time.
I mean, it's kind of perfect because Knights Table wise, like wearing a cowboy hat, there's nothing more manly.
True, I should have done that.
Yeah, actually, you should have. I should have reminded you about that.
We're the type of dudes the Duttons hate. That's all I got to say. Trying to appropriate their culture over here.
Well, you know,
we?
at least we don't do the what's it called?
Are we?
At least we don't do the whole like environmental thing that the ranching is causing environmental issues. That one season 3 or whatever that was. That one bimbo they had in the show and whatnot. Which
the hippie.
She played a bimbo, I should say. I don't know if she's actually a bimbo.
The hippie. You're talking about the hippie chick?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. She was a painful character.
Yeah. No doubt.
But yeah,
Iowa State, huh?
Yeah. They're not doing great lately, but 7-0 start to the season, and we beat Iowa, so that's a win. And
that's all that matters.
Yeah, I hate that team. Disgusting city, by the way. But yeah. So I mean, they've had a rough start to the season. But that's okay. The Chiefs haven't, which hurts me deeply, considering a blocked field goal.
That was crazy.
And Bo Nix outplays Mahomes.
Yeah,
this makes no sense at all.
Dude. It is not Mahomes' year. Good Lord.
Although Butker, as usual, is
he's awesome.
I mean, he's just an alpha male.
Oh yeah,
straight up. Yeah.
All right. So
to get into it,
we have a message to you youngins.
youngins.
So are we technically talking to ourselves then?
Yes, in a
Since
way.
we are, we are significantly younger than JT. Dude, okay. Even my dad now is getting into the jokes on JT.
Oh my gosh, getting your dad into it is not because Dave will cook somebody real quick, dude.
So funny. So funny. No, anyway, like Gable mentioned, we do have a Knights Table episode today for you folks, specifically catered to that younger generation, the teenagers, early 20s, again, guys our age as well. So we're kind of talking to the guy in the mirror a little bit with this type of episode as well. Actually, not even a little bit, a lot of it.
Probably teens all the way up to like 30, 35 here.
Absolutely.
Too, because that could be considered up to young men in that generation too.
And unfortunately, JT would fall out of that category.
He would, unfortunately, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
He's going to miss out. And, it is what it is. So he's just moved on from that part of his life. But
Poor guy.
something that you and we've talked a lot about, just kind of personally and whatnot, is just the older generation. Not all of them, certainly not all of them.
Yeah. Never going to generalize and say all of a generation does something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But something that it gets said a lot about our generation, and I'll include the current teenagers in this as well, or in that group as well, is that this generation is soft, and it's a very unfocused generation, especially the young men. They're just unfocused in general with life, with whatever.
What they want to do in life.
What they want to do,
et cetera.
and all this kind of stuff. Very unfocused and kind of going with the flow. That's something we hear a lot as well, and just, vibing out and all this. And like, listen, I'm all for, taking a couple hours to go on a hike in nature and kind of just vibe with nature. Like, I get it. I'm cool, but there's truth to those statements, no doubt. The soft men, the unfocused, things like that. There's absolutely truth to those. But also, if we're not going to sit here and generalize an entire generation for things that are said by some, then don't do it to us. Because not all of us are that way by any means. The three of us are trying really hard not to be that way. Are we perfect in that at all times? Absolutely not. Far from it. However, are we trying extremely hard to not be grouped in with that soft men? Because that, honestly, I think that's the worst one that I hear that like fires me up. It's like, well, I'm definitely not going to be that.
Well, it's also the real conversation about this too is that older generation, it's not productive to hear that too.
No.
And honestly, we should take it as our younger generation. Wow. Our younger generation, and basically turn around and say, screw you, essentially.
Yeah.
And we should turn around and do the opposite of what they're saying. Because the problem is that what that older generation, a lot of times the ones that say that, they don't understand that, one, they raised that. They raised a generation, so to speak, that can't decide their gender. So,
or they at least allowed it.
At least
Maybe
allowed,
they didn't
at least
directly
allowed
raise
it.
They
At least allowed
it.
it. But so you're taking no responsibility for your generation too, and we're here to call out our generation to take responsibility for it now.
For sure.
Because is there fair criticism? Yes, we've met plenty of soft men around our age, younger than us, older than us, etc. All around that. That is a real criticism. That is a thing. The vibing out thing. So there a lot of our generation, they love to do get in a van and just travel the country and provide nothing to society and whatnot.
Right.
No, and I say a lot. It's not a lot.
Right.
It's a very small percentage of the population. Sure. So
and the like get in a van and explore the country. That's almost like it's like another way of just saying, maybe not literally getting in a van and exploring the country.
It's escaping.
It's escaping, and it's just BSing around.
Correct.
Is the point. And absolutely. I mean, we've even seen it with some guys like in a book club we're with. Just like some comments made by some guys. It's just like, is that really the best choice right now to be doing that? You know what I mean? Like, is that the best thing? Maybe it is for you. Like, okay, maybe you got something going on that maybe it is the best decision for you. But I find it hard to believe that it may be,
Yeah. Well, and that's key too, because in our current world, everything's been made to be very easy, very accessible. Technology in general, and I don't mean just phones and iPads. Like I won't even just talk about only that. I'm talking about cars, planes, access to transportation in general, food, how quick it is, shopping, etc. All that's at our fingertips like that now. You can travel anywhere, you can go anywhere, maybe for a price nowadays with planes and whatnot, especially. But the point of the matter is that everything's easy. So you almost have to, as young men, you have to buck against that and take harder routes a lot of the times,
Mm-hmm.
and purposely. That's why we talk about fitness too, because if you force yourself into fitness, you have to these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have the option to be able to sit on the couch, work from home, and that's it.
Sure.
And do nothing else.
And plenty of people
and
do.
eat shitty food.
Yeah.
So you have that option, but that was never an option up until about 1950 or 60 or so, give or take, in the U.S., give or take. So it wasn't an option up until then. They had to, it was required for you to be a hardened man then. So you now have to create yourself into that, because softer men, as we were talking about, they are the ones that are easier to dominate and take over if the government wants to. If
Easier to
some
control.
tyrannical force
Oh, yeah.
wants to control them, if corporations want to control them, softer men are easier to control. So you should become hard to control, is the idea, is what we're talking about here. It's a big factor in that. And again, that older generation has to take some responsibility in that too, and say, hey, we were part of that raised that and allowed it, and was apathetic enough to sit back and allow it to happen. And that's where these soft men are coming from. Now, in the case of us three, our parents obviously did something right compared to their generation. You know, obviously there was something that went right, and that at least our mindsets are headed in the right direction. We continue to try to strive towards something better every single day. You know, like, and the discipline's the hardest aspect, because you really could just sit on that phone all day long.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be easy. It would be actually really enjoyable, for that matter. It'd be very dopamine inducing, and you just sit there. But then you step back and you get off that phone and you're like, oh, I'm wasting my life.
I didn't do anything.
Doing this.
Right.
I didn't do anything today.
I mean, heck, dude, even you know, you said like groceries are at our fingertips, and food, it's all very accessible. You don't even have to leave your house now to get groceries or to get food with things like DoorDash or Shipt or Uber Eats or whatever. Like, that's how easy it is. You're hungry? Oh, well, I'll just order McDonald's. I don't feel like leaving the house, so I'll just DoorDash McDonald's.
When our ancestors had to hunt to eat.
For sure. Yeah.
You
yeah.
know, they had to hunt to eat, or they had to build a farm.
Yeah.
And till the land, make sure the land was fertile, et cetera,
right.
to actually grow that food on it and whatnot. And that, again, was probably up until the 1900s or so, at least.
And to a degree, not even to a degree, like that is still done today.
Oh, sure.
It's just different with big grocery chains and things like that. Obviously, we're not saying people don't farm anymore, and
actually,
people don't kill animals anymore to eat.
Funny enough, at Iowa State, there was the Future Farmers of America there, and there was a massive agricultural presence there.
There you go.
It's still a thing.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And that is how a lot of our food is put into our grocery stores, is from local farms.
Which we should encourage more and more. Too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And farmers markets and things like that, fruit stands, you know, the local people selling their local goods and foods and things like that. Like, obviously we should patronize that, you know, and you know, getting your beef from a farm directly. You know, it's a great way to get beef. Is it a little bit more expensive per pound? Yeah, it might be, but the quality of that meat is off the charts. You know, my family, we've done that 2 or 3 times, where, you know, you get like a quarter cow or a half a cow or whatever. And I mean, that meat is awesome, you know? So it's not like, we're not saying people don't farm and things like that, but it was way more competitive back in those days, because you also had to deal with people coming to your farm and killing you for your land and things like that. You know, we were talking about Yellowstone before, and, you know, it's obviously a modern day fictional story, but is it? You know what I mean? Is it? Back in the old days, you know, earlier you were talking about you should be hard to control. Okay, well, we're not talking about being, you know, uncontrollable in the sense of like you just go around committing crimes and things like that. That's not what we're talking
Rambunctious,
about.
essentially, and
Right.
Basically objecting to everything everybody says
Correct.
around you.
Because that's not productive.
Yeah.
But in like the Wild West days, you had cowboys that couldn't be controlled because they were hard men. They were strong. They were able to fight. They had weapons, things like that. They were trained on those weapons, and they had real world experience. You know, again, times are different. We don't have rampant cowboys anymore. Okay.
Be sick if we did.
It would be, honestly. I think it'd be awesome. I would 100% do that.
Better generation.
Yeah. Like, awesome. But in today's world, so now bringing it back to current times, this isn't just a history lesson on cowboys and ranches, but bringing it to current times, fitness, like you just mentioned. Number one, that we have mentioned this so many times throughout the almost 3 years of this podcast, that fitness is the bare minimum. That is the foundation for you being hardened throughout your life, whether it's your physical, your mental, your emotional, your financial, whatever. Physical fitness is the number one thing, and that should be your number one priority to keep up throughout your entire life. It's that simple. It starts there. Okay? And then as you put yourself through those hard things, fitness related, physical related, things like that, as you put yourself through those hard things, when hard things arise throughout your life in any situation, you will be more equipped to handle those things, aka getting rid of that soft men, tag that gets put on our generation. But because so many of these younger guys choose to not focus on fitness, choose to not be in the gym, choose to not eat better food most of the time, they don't fall into that category, and then they're constantly stressed out. They're constantly anxious. We were just talking about someone from our past kind of who is just high all the time because he's always stressed out. And it's like, well, dude, if you would put yourself under stress on purpose in a situation, in an environment that you can control.
Microdosed environment.
Exactly. Then when those hard things arise in life, like, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying you're just going to breeze through it, but you will be better equipped to handle that mentally, physically, emotionally, etc. I think that will also get rid of the unfocused, because fitness requires a tremendous amount of focus. When you're trying to make physical changes to your body, you can't just go into the gym and just willy-nilly every workout. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing will happen. No results. But if you follow a structured plan like Untapped Training, you will see results.
What a thought. Right.
Because you will be focused. You will have something to follow. And it doesn't have to be that difficult. As a matter of fact, it can be tremendously simple. But because a lot of guys around our age and younger don't put themselves in those situations and then choose to not focus on those things, then they are soft men who are unfocused.
Correct.
And make all of us look bad. Which is why you and I are trying to do what we are with this podcast, with our content, and with our training as well. And just with our lives in general. The path that we are choosing to go down is a much harder route. If we want to work in corporate America our whole life, we could. You don't have to have a college degree. You certainly can, but you can still go down that path.
Sales,
and
finance, whatever.
Yeah, and you can do that for 30, 40, 50 years. And that's awesome. You can make a very, very good living for yourself, for you, for your family, and you can provide and all that, and that is not a bad thing to do. But we are choosing the other. We are choosing the harder one. And we're not saying if you're not an entrepreneur or you don't have a creative idea to expand on that you're soft. It's not what we're saying here, but it's an example of us. So you might be wondering, it's like, well, who are these guys to say these things? Well, that's an example. We've been involved in fitness for a very long time. You've got a few more years than me in it, whether it's training or just yourself working out and things like that. That's another example. So it's putting our faces and our voices on the internet through this podcast. That's another one. It's very difficult for us to sit down and talk about some of these breaking news topics that we do because it's scary. There's a lot of details to it.
What are people going to think?
What are people going to think?
It's still a thought.
Absolutely.
Then we're don't really care.
Well, right. Because we're almost 3 years into this. We've gotten past that point. But
Correct.
Probably the first whole year, whenever we would talk about some kind of current event, it's just like, what are people going to think about this?
Or you'd say like gay or something like that, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, right. Whoa, we said that on the podcast.
Right.
Whoa.
And it's just like, it's okay. So I don't know. Those are a few examples of how we try to separate ourselves from the soft, from the unfocused tags that get put on this generation. Because I know at least for me, and I know you and I know Mitch would also agree with this too. Like it's a scary thing to think that you would fall into one of those categories or both.
Yeah. And the unfocused one is an interesting one too, because I think what's important about talking about being unfocused and how you were saying that physical fitness takes a lot of focus with it, is there's also the fact that you should have some sort of lethal capability too. Whether that's what you and I have done, the boxing in your garage or the practicing jiu-jitsu, or having just an understanding to at least some degree of firearms
Definitely.
as well.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, if you're a man and you're afraid of a firearm, then we have another conversation to have in that as well.
When you're scared of guns, that's when bad things happen with guns.
Exactly.
You learn, not to cut you off or cut into your point here, but it's very simple with firearms. It really is. You learn to respect it, and as fun as it sounds, it will respect you. Sometimes problems occur and it jams or whatever, but that also goes into taking care of your guns. You got to take care of your dog, right? You got to wash your dog. You got to take it out. You got to feed it, your cat, whatever. Like you have to do all those things with your pets. Not that a gun is a pet, because it certainly isn't, but you have to take care of it. but you learn to respect it, it will respect you. And that fear goes away real fast. Because I get it. Like, you have this thing in your hand that is setting off a small explosion that has the ability to kill a living being. Okay, there's a stress that can come with that as a beginner. But the more you put yourself in those scenarios, like, you will quickly realize that as long as you do what you're supposed to do, you operate the weapon in a safe manner, you will be fine. And then when and if the time comes where you do need it, you don't freak out because you're scared of the gun.
Which is extremely key, because you have to be comfortable around them, no matter what. And again, you can think what you want about the United States, but there is real physical threat in our cities and pretty much anywhere else. And there's also, for example, there's a small niche scenario going on in Colorado where, you have the Venezuelan migrants that we talked about in the past, but also you have farms being hit by wolves as well. So, livestock's being picked off by wolves that shouldn't have been put there, which is a very interesting scenario.
Yeah.
I think actually recently there was a bill passed to help solve that scenario where you could hunt these animals. But the point is, you have to be physically capable for something like that as well.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not able to kill these wolves that are taking out your livestock, there goes your living, And
food.
It's the same thing as if you're not able to kill somebody who's trying to attack your family, there goes your entire family, or there goes who knows what with it. If you can't put that threat down in that scenario, you should be at least prepared for it. Now, there's no guarantee what's going to happen in that scenario because it's a violent scenario. Violent scenarios are very scary and something you really don't want to ever be involved in at all. I've at all times, like, I'm usually a one breaking up a fight if a fight's about to cause and whatnot, because of the fact that I'm like, there's a point where violence can play a role, but it's essentially last resort.
Yeah.
And sometimes that last resort could be somebody going after Mitchell in a hockey game, as simple as that is.
Sure.
Okay, if somebody's been pulling shit the whole game, I'm going to put their face into the ice. Yes. And they'll never do the same thing again.
Right.
So it's even in an environment like hockey, you can see that. That's why fighting's so effective in hockey.
Sure.
Because it's a consequence for what you do. So you have to be prepared. You have to be aware. That's why we walk as men on the outside of the sidewalk as well. Because if something happens, we need to push her out of the way or whatever it is, or take the kids out of the way or whatnot. We're the ones taking the sacrifice and the blunt of that scenario, or the brunt of that scenario. So I think lethal capability is another thing to add in there too, because it also comes with a certain amount of confidence as well.
Yeah.
And then you stay more focused as well if you're more confident in your lethal ability at that point in time too. Because again, you now have to train that stuff purposely. Learning martial arts or learning firearms is something you have to choose nowadays, unless you join the military, which now might be a good option, as we were talking about before.
Mr. Hegstaff, turn that shit around.
Hopefully we'll stop. We'll stop with the bullshit wars and whatnot, and we'll actually fight real battles like the cartels that are in our cities and whatnot, that type of stuff.
Pedophiles,
100%. Human traffickers, but the point remains is that for the most of the men in this population, you're choosing to be capable like that. And it has to be a choice that you actively make to go against the stereotypes that we're working on and talking about right now.
And all of this goes into altering the country's future in the right direction. Country, the world, whatever, but it can even be as individual as your town, as your county, as your state, and then also as your country. All of these things go into altering the future in a positive way, a positive direction. Because we talked about, and this isn't a breaking news episode, but we did talk last week how it's the step in the right direction with Trump getting elected again. And now throughout the last week here, even as recent as today when we're recording this on the 13th, we're seeing the steps in the right direction with the people that are going to be leading this government. I think there's a ton of positives in there. Now, they all have to execute on what they're being asked to do and what they're saying they're going to do. Like, there has to be execution. And we also mentioned there has to be accountability for that execution to happen, because you can say all these great things to get the country headed back in the right directions, like what we're talking about now. But someone's got to be holding you accountable so that those things do in fact happen. Just like,
AKA the citizens, the young men.
Absolutely.
Because that physical violence comes into that too. We're the ones that are capable of physical violence.
Sure.
We're not going to put women on the front lines, as we've talked about in the past episode with First Form and whatnot. We're not going to put women on the front lines. The men are the ones that sacrifice their lives if necessary. and back the government up in this scenario that hopefully we are able to trust
Right.
nowadays.
And it, it's even, this goes back to the other points we've made as well. You have to hold yourself accountable to keep up with your fitness, keep up with your life, whether it's your job or your relationships or whatever. You have to keep up with those things. Okay. You have to keep up with your financials, things like that. Like, you have to hold yourself accountable, just like we're talking about with the citizens holding the government accountable so that the right things happen. If you don't hold yourself accountable to going to the gym and eating correctly and things like that, it's not going to happen. The results aren't going to happen. You're not going to be physically fit. You're not going to be physically able in these violent situations or just any situation that might arise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of my last thing on the country going in the right direction too, I actually wanted to bring it back to something we talked about last week. And you were talking about how young men really got fed up.
Yeah.
White men especially really voted, what was it, a 30-point swing toward Trump or something like that? Something crazy like that?
From previous years, yeah.
And again, we saw black men also swing more toward Trump too, Latino men, et cetera. So men are getting very fed up. And I wanted to touch back on that too.
And white women too, as we talked about.
And white women,
too.
yes, 100%. Yeah. And in the case of men here, it's like men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women are. Men account for a majority of workplace deaths. Men account for a majority of depression, that type of thing as well. So they also account for a very high majority of loneliness right now in the country as well. That was hilarious. But they also account for a majority of loneliness in the country right now. So that's also a part of what we're trying to turn around with you and I. The stuff we're talking about implementing, gents, is the stuff you implement, so that way you avoid falling into those statistics we just talked about.
Correct.
That is what it is. That's how we turn this country around, because we want you young men around. We need you around because you are the backbone, the physical backbone of society.
Yes.
That's why we talk about how important young men are to society, even if some dumb white bitch on TikTok or something like that tells you that you're not worth it.
Right.
Because, first of all, just ignore her.
Right.
I mean, she's obviously extremely deranged.
Right.
Any of the videos we've seen.
Right.
The trans mom or whatever. It's like, shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up. We don't have time to listen to that type of stuff. Now we're on the offensive. We're going to use that offensive. We're going to ignore everything they say, and we're going to turn this country back to where it needs to be. That's how we turn it around.
Which is probably a crazy thing to think about. You're sitting there, you're 14 years old, you're 18 years old, you're 22 years old, and it's like, how am I going to be a part of that? Well, you absolutely are. You absolutely
100%
are. We have to remind ourselves of that all the time. All the time. And we're 26 now. And it's like, we see the impact that even just you and I can have on our viewers, on our listeners, on the people we interact with in real life, things like that. Like, we can see the impact that we have. So we know how very real these things that we're talking about tonight are. And how much substance they really do hold. Because you look at these last 4 years specifically, president aside, politics aside, men have been demonized for a long time.
Without a doubt.
Whether it's just these 4 years, whether it's the previous 20 years, it doesn't matter, whatever, but men have been demonized. And so these young men think it's okay to be apathetic and weak and be led.
Because they're told they're oppressors.
They're told they're oppressors. They're told they're not needed.
Yep.
They're told all these negative things. All of these negative things. And it would be very easy to fall into those traps. It would, because it's everywhere on TikTok, Instagram, social media in general. If you watch any of the mainstream news and things like that, like, it's everywhere. And so you can't fault anyone for falling into that trap. Just like you can't necessarily fault anyone on the left for falling into some of the things that they sit there and they die on their hill for, because they've fallen for the trap. There's a propaganda machine working to get people to think that way, just like there is against young men. And it doesn't matter who the president is, it doesn't matter the politics, it matters us. We matter on the ground level to make those changes. Now, do those other things play a role? For sure, obviously. Okay, we're not going to deny that or say that that's not the case. But even if the election would have gone a different way last week, this stuff still matters. Probably even more, quite honestly.
100% even more.
100%. Because now a lot of those threats to young men, to American society in general, should go away or stop
or they'll be hidden.
or they'll be hidden.
Because that's the thing. They might go into the low key push. That's,
For sure.
That's what you have to be aware of too.
Absolutely. So be aware of where you're getting information from. Implement these things that we're talking about today on this episode, but also in past episodes. Pay attention to those nights tables, the breaking, all of them for that matter. But don't take it lightly. That's the biggest thing.
Well, I want to end off too. My thing is, young men, you are not oppressors. You are not useless. Women do need you, by the way. You are necessary for society. 1,000%, you are a necessity for our current society to move forward in the right direction. There is no doubt about that. Again, like Wurtz said, tune out the noise. It's the propaganda machine. You will ignore every bit of it, and you will keep pushing forward. That's where we're going from here. That's our mission now. We're going to look forward, and we're going to really hammer down on what we should be doing these next 4 years and beyond.
And women, support your men.
100%.
Whether it's a romantic thing or not. I'm just saying, like, sisters, support your brothers. And then they will absolutely, in turn, support you.
Without a doubt.
Your boyfriend, your husband will support you. Your brother will support you in whatever way you might need
Uncle, father, whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is.
name it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing that's lacked, too, is just the support of women. Because the support of a woman can drive you to do just about anything.
I literally texted Holly last night, and I go, if this was the medieval times, I would have literally conquered nations for you. That's what I texted.
And that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I would have turned cities to dust for her. Essentially, is what would have happened.
And that,
yeah, because it is very clear. Every day she tells me she's behind me. I can tell she's behind me, and she's a part of my mission. Every day.
Yeah,
that's the key of a supportive woman.
Sure.
Mothers included in that too. Mothers are so key. You can see any NFL player. Who do they think first?
Oh yeah,
it's their mom.
Oh yeah.
So that should tell you women how important you are to this mission as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
without a doubt. Well, guys, at the end of all of our non-guest episodes, Money Mitch will ask us a Q&A question that's submitted by you guys, the listeners or the viewers. We have a few different ways that we would like those questions to be submitted. So first, you can DM them to us on Instagram at untapped.llp. You can DM them to us individually. You can text them to us individually if you have our numbers. You can also email them to us. Our email is extricationfitness@gmail.com. I know that's a mouthful. Okay, so there's an email button in our Instagram and our Facebook bios. If you need to know how to spell extrication, just look at that flag behind Gable there. He's making a crazy face.
Missing Mitchell right now.
So you can email them to us. Finally, you can leave them in the comments of our YouTube videos or our Instagram posts. Okay, we do not only are all of these podcasts on YouTube, but we also have vlogs on there. And then Instagram, we post many different things throughout the week, whether it's some of my content, some of Gable's content. And again, we will be launching at least one new series here on Instagram very, very soon, more fitness related, because we want to get more of that content out to you guys. But you can leave your questions in the comments of either one of those. All of those questions get sent to Money Mitch. Money Mitch will then pick out a question that pertains to the content of the podcast. Sometimes it's just a random question about something, like we've had plenty about creatine in the past. They can be funny, or sometimes Money Mitch will just come up with a good solid question to end off the episode. Let's take a deep breath there. It's a lot. With all that being said, Money Mitch.
Is there an innate ability to focus, right? Do people have an innate ability to focus more than other people?
Like, is it genetically built in?
Sure.
Is kind of the idea there. Like, are some people like they're just born and then they can focus better?
So my first thought on that is no. No.
Yep.
I think everyone has the ability to do that because there are endless amounts of niche things in the world. It could be something very weird to you and I, or it could be something that we are interested in, but someone might be able to focus on it more than we are. We're able to focus on our business, on social media content, things like that. We're able to focus a lot of that, and we do. Other people, it doesn't matter so much to, whether it's our age or older or younger. Some people, it doesn't matter to them. So if they tried to sit down and edit a podcast episode for YouTube, they're probably not going to be able to focus like you are on that. Because
which is really surprising that I can focus on that for knowing me. But
Sure.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But it's because...
That's why I can focus on programming, the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's another great example. But it's because it matters to you. You also know it matters to me. It matters to our future to get a podcast episode out there. Our programming
Matters to both of our families' futures.
It
for that matter,
absolutely,
too.
absolutely, and that's how I think about it too. Whenever
Yeah.
I feel myself kind of lacking on some untapped stuff, I'm like, okay, not only am I letting myself down here, but I'm letting Gable down, and then whatever the future holds, I'm letting that down too. So-
God willing, our children, everything.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but for someone else, they couldn't care less about editing a podcast episode, so they're not going to sit down and be able to sit there for 3 or 4 hours editing that, making a vlog, whatever. So I think that's where my mind goes to for the no side of it anyway. It's just people have different interests. I'm not going to be able to sit down and focus on, I don't know, what's something I hate besides the left?
Anime.
Well, I'm actually, no, I'm just kidding.
I was like, I was like,
No,
what?
exactly.
Where did this come from?
Yeah, it's a very random example, but yes, correct.
I don't know why it popped into my head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would not be able to focus on that.
Or like theater.
Yeah, you're not going to catch me at the theater.
Mitch and I went to the Fox when we were like, I was like 12, he was like 10.
I'm very sorry.
And
I can see that you're still traumatized.
it was,
from
we went to see The Lion King. And we literally after were like, Mom, Dad, why did we go to that? And my mom was so mad that we didn't like it. And Mitch and I were just like, that sucked.
Yeah, I just think people have different interests, so people will be able to focus on things that are different than the things that you can focus on.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because I think what's really key, and we talked about the unfocused thing earlier in the episode as well, where there is an incredible amount of research coming out right now on what screen time does to young people's brains. And the amount of 2, 3, 4-year-olds I know, they start with technology and iPads
You know
at
a
that
lot
age.
of 2, 3, and 4-year-olds.
Oh, yeah, they're my best friends. Yeah, they're actually going to be our next guest. Yep, on the podcast.
Hey, Mitch.
Yeah. Okay, boys.
do
Make it weird. Why don't we?
Do we need to do something here? Yeah, I think so. Okay, you heard it here first, folks. Gable is friends with a bunch of 2, 3,
Okay.
and 4-year-olds.
Okay.
Where's your kill all pedophiles hat?
Dope. Dope. That's going to be clipped for sure. Yep, that'll be pulled back out of the archives later on when we really take off. But the point is that, of course, like through Holly's family, through my family and whatnot, the young kids in those families, a lot of the times what I've seen is these very young children with screens in their hand a lot.
They're already addicted to
lot.
it.
I don't even like the idea of them having screens at all.
Yeah.
At all, essentially, unless it's like one of those like learning tablets or whatever you call it. Or
Sure.
I don't know, like to develop motor skills and whatnot, that
Yeah.
type of stuff. So there's overwhelming research on that topic where the attention span for young children and then later on in their life, the effects from screen time is extremely detrimental. So the reason I say this is because whenever, again, God willing, that I'm a parent, that I will make sure that is negated as much as I can. I understand the benefits of technology and the business aspects it brings and whatnot, but it is a later on in life thing.
Sure.
Because when your adult mind or your older mind can comprehend that, it is much easier to build an attention span when they're younger. That's why we got, phones when we were 15 or 16?
I didn't have one until I had my license.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were 15, 16 years
So
old.
24.
That'd be crazy. I'd be so disappointed in you.
was
Yeah,
so-
yeah.
like,
He's
Mitch
just
is
gone
not
over
even,
it.
he's just not even paying attention.
Come on,
Like,
dude.
God. I made it funny, dude.
Respect your boys' jokes. But I like that's
I was 16, by the way, when I got my
yes,
license.
yes.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, let's make that
Pass
really
first
clear.
try.
Really clear. No big deal.
Great score.
Yeah, I didn't. I think I got like a 70s a pass, and I think I got a 68. Because my parallel parking was shit. And now it's super dialed. Just to be honest with you. But
This guy drives a manual.
yeah, no big deal. Yeah. It's okay.
Sorry, go on with your point. here.
But what was it? Oh, yeah. So screen time. We obviously got phones. We were 15, 16 years old. Most of what we did was play outside.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, almost all of what we did. My parents, what they did was they would bring things like crayons, Play-Doh, that type of stuff, building blocks to dinner when we would go out because they knew Mitch and I were very rambunctious. Naturally, two brothers are that way. So we would go out and they would entertain us by giving us these very mind developing things to play with. It's motor skills is what it is. Yeah, 100%.
Right.
It's fine motor skills, hand-eye coordination, all that stuff that came along with that. So instead of giving us a tablet, they would do that.
Sure.
Which again, I don't know how developed tablets were at the time.
I was going to say,
but the point remains,
the only downfall of this too, while we're on this topic, is nowadays in schools of all levels, elementary, middle, high school, and beyond, everything requires a tablet or a small laptop, like a what were they called? Chromebook.
Yep.
Even in elementary school, like maybe the kids don't have one to take home. I don't know for sure. I don't know that. But they have them everywhere at school, and even we were seeing in our last couple years of high school where a lot of stuff was on our phones.
Absolutely.
And if you didn't have one, you weren't able to participate, which could have led to you getting a bad grade on a certain assignment or whatever it is. Even things as silly as like Kahoot, like we used our phones for it, and so it's just like, is it possible to not have technology in your hands at 6 years old when you're in kindergarten? Mm-hmm. I think that's how old, 5, 6?
Yeah, 6. I was 6 then.
Something
kindergarten,
like that. Yeah. Like, is it possible nowadays? I don't know.
Well, I think that's more of a condemnation of public schools nowadays.
Sure.
Because in a big way, they use technology heavily because it is more efficient for them.
Sure.
Public schools naturally, and not to mention, as we've talked about with higher ups, it can lead to more indoctrination too.
Yeah.
Of course. So I think with that, it just makes things easier. And there's a lot of public schools with a lack of resources. So they'll just hand a kid a computer and hopefully they can do the work on that instead of having a teacher be close to them and whatnot, which is probably an encouragement, at least for right now, unless the Department of Education gets abolished and things start going in the right direction in this country. It's an encouragement right now for things like homeschooling, specialized private schools in general, which is why you need to be making financial moves, especially in these next 4 years, because you need to be able to provide your family that opportunity of needed. Because it also goes into the point too, because at public schools, a lot of times what you're going to see is that your kids will see their peers with phones, AirPods, every piece of technology possible. They will see their peers with that. They'll come home and be like, Mom and Dad, why don't I have one?
Yeah.
The way you avoid that is you actually have them around kids who are also striving toward better things and not doing that. Like a lot of those private schools will probably do that better, or the homeschooling will do that better too. And again, I'm not a parent yet, so it's like I can't for sure guarantee it, but I can tell you right now there's a likely chance that will lead to better outcomes than being in public school a lot of times, unless public school starts changing around a little bit and everybody gets on the same page with the phones, et cetera. And that goes for having them also be around a good group of friends.
Yeah.
That are not, the parents encourage them to go play outside just like your kids. And then they are able to play around people and kids of the same caliber as they are at that point in time.
Well, and two quick things here before we end this off. Number one, continuing on your point here, all of that is also an advocacy for making public school better. Maybe we take all these laptops and tablets out of the school, save the money on buying all of those because it's either every classroom or every kid has one. So saving money on that to then be able to pay teachers more so that they're actually teaching and do a better job. And they're more face-to-face and more hands-on with the kids and things like that. And the kids are doing more motor skill type assignments or lessons, or, maybe we use that money to build an outdoor classroom so that once a week you're able to do science class or history class outside, in the springtime or in the early fall when it's still beautiful outside. We're going to go outside for an hour and a half and have class. Yeah. Is it possibly more distracting because there's, bugs flying around and birds flying around and stuff? Okay. But they're not trapped in a classroom.
What about labs and hands-on activities in classrooms?
Exactly. And that was going to be my next point. Absolutely. And then second part of all that, just because you mentioned getting around, having a good group of friends. That's why all of us here, like we look back on our childhoods and we're so thankful for where we grew up because we had so many kids around our age that were also around in proximity.
Yeah.
You know? And like for me, I grew up on a 2 cul-de-sac dead end street. So we didn't have a ton of traffic. There was a bunch of kids on the street. We were always outside. Which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did we play our fair share of video games and stuff at night? Yeah, there's no doubt. I won't sit here and deny that. But every single day we were doing something outside. Something.
Well, and that our neighborhood literally had, as you remember, woods right in the middle of it.
Exactly.
So you could just have all the kids go into the woods.
Yeah.
Airsoft, paintball, building
Right.
forts,
Yeah.
running through the woods, sledding through the woods.
Sure.
Which we got injured on many times,
gonna
but it was
say,
well worth it.
Sounds like a stupid idea.
Oh, it was super stupid, but it was
it'd
sick.
be fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. We build ramps out of snow and all that stuff.
Yeah, dude.
Actual stuff kids are supposed to be doing, by the way.
Because that's also being creative.
100%.
Like, hey, let's all team up and build a ramp out of snow. You know, like, that's awesome.
Which is also kind of funny. Like this same conversation, just real quick here, is probably why video games become so prominent, because for young men, they are very easy to focus on. Because of the fact that you are attacking a goal and conquering a goal in this video game is the idea. Depending on how much use you should have on it, that's another question entirely.
Yeah, that's the real thing.
And because video games, I would actually say could be useful, but not to the point of where you're like Destiny,
Yeah.
that like weird autistic
Well,
one or
I
whatever.
mean, honestly, a game like that, a big open world
No,
type game.
the streamer.
Oh,
Yeah, the guy.
Yes.
Yeah. He.
Have you listened to the Elon episode on Joe Rogan?
Yes, I've listened to most of it. I haven't listened to all of it yet.
Well, this was right at the beginning where they were talking about how
Yep.
I believe it was doctors or surgeons. It was surgeons
Correct.
are 26% better surgeon if they played video games. Like, how crazy is that?
Hand-eye coordination. 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Because it's intricate hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, right.
The surgeons have to be very, very specific where their hand-eye coordination is.
It's life or
Unless,
death.
Unless you want to cut somebody open.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
exactly.
I just found that extremely interesting. And then as they
it
talked
was
about
very
that more, like, it made sense, you know?
Agreed.
And because I think it was Joe was saying, it's like, if that was a class you had to take in med school and you knew it would make you 26% better, like, why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
You know?
And I think Joe's point there is a good one, because that's where video games can be useful, is you're using it in a dedicated manner to become better.
Sure.
Because whenever, like, how many kids do we know that, I mean, because I probably got caught up in this when I was a teenager too, but how many kids do you know that if they had a day off, they'd play 12 hours video games?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's not going to be helpful
And
for the kid.
that's
just going to fry your brain at that point in time.
and that's not a good
1 to
thing.
2 hours of conquering some Warzone stuff with your boys
Yeah,
or whatever,
oh, yeah.
that's probably really useful.
And you're not even thinking about it in the scenarios of the surgeon things. You're not even thinking about it like being work. It's just like you're having fun.
Exactly. So in a reality, it would be a very effective class because everybody would participate.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just killing people.
I think you and I are just thinking only war games, even though there's a bunch of other video games.
Yes.
Where it's like, let's go.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. Let's go take out this general in Russia or in China or whatever. We got to save democracy.
Where are we dropping, boys?
Let's go participate in the Crusades.
Yeah.
Wait.
All right. With all that being said, guys, that is going to be episode 140. If you stuck with us, which I hope you did, thank you very much. Until next time, wait. Share the show.
Oh.
Make sure you share the show. Until next time, peace and love.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.